Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shakras, and in today's video I have a digital piano, a little keyboard that many of you have wanted to see me review, and that is none other than Yamaha's PSS-A50. One could consider it to perhaps be Yamaha's best $100 keyboard, simply by the fact that I believe it's their only $100 keyboard that they currently sell. But regardless, we're going to be seeing how good or how bad the PSS-A50 is, based on how actually genuinely fun to play its smaller cousin, the PSS-F30 was. I'm actually expecting this to be quite nice, and for the price anyway. And I have heard some nice things about it, especially in regards to the action, which is the same action that is used in their higher-end Reface mini keyboard series, which, by the way, I have one of those in the studio right now, still in the box, haven't opened it, but I'm super excited to. So if you guys want to see me do a review of the Reface CP, definitely subscribe, and I will be getting to that very soon. But before we do that, we are going to look at the PSS-A50. I've had a lot of people request it, I've had a lot of people want to see me review it, and so today we will be doing just that. Like I said, we're going to see what's good about it and what's not good about it, and I'm going to give you my overall thoughts and opinions. I think before we go into this, though, I feel like we should kind of discuss who this keyboard is made for. Who would buy this? Well, first of all, I think to better understand that, I think we should return once again to the F30 and just talk briefly about this. Why would someone buy this? Well, this is a $59 keyboard, and it's very affordable and very simple. Also very fun. You can genuinely make music with it. But the reason someone might get this is for their child. That's a very popular reason people buy these, is a simple, affordable instrument that their child can play with and decide whether or not they like the piano. Of course, an adult could buy this too and learn the names of the notes and learn triads and scales, but I think what most people buy this for is for their child. However, the PSS-A50 has some more advanced features that a young child probably wouldn't really take too much advantage of. There's an arpeggiator and a motion control thing, and I feel like a 4 to 5 year old could push the buttons, but might not really be able to know how to tap into that and make it do super cool things. So this, I think, is designed for older people, not children, but like older children. On the box here, I believe, I can't see too much of them, but I think they are showing a teenager here on the box. So this is a good digital piano for teenagers, and once again, like the F30, an adult totally could buy this and have some fun with it. This actually has USB MIDI as well, so for all of those of you who are into that, you can definitely tap into that aspect of this digital piano. Again, another reason why it could also be for adults, because you can have some fun with that. On the back side of this very brightly colored box, we have some little logos showing all of the different aspects of the A50. It has 37 different keys. You have 42 voices, which is less than half of the F30, so we'll see how good they are. It has touch response. Now, this is a big one. This is a big selling point of the A50. I believe it to be Yamaha's most affordable digital instrument that has touch sensitivity. So we're going to see if that's actually useful, if you can actually learn anything about playing the piano with this instrument, and we're just going to see how useful that is. On the logo, it only says P and F, which stands for piano and forte, meaning loud and soft. So it could be just a 2-level type of touch response, or it could be a little bit more gradual than that. So you might be able to play, you know, piano and mezzo piano, and then kind of forte and stuff like that. So we'll see how effective the touch response is. It also advertises the USB MIDI functionalities. It's portable. It has a singular built-in speaker. It has a singular headphone jack, which we will be using to extract the direct signal from in today's video. 32-note polyphony, and then the things I've been talking about earlier in the video, the motion effect, the arpeggiator, and the phrase recording, which, again, like I said, are something that a 4 or 5 year old wouldn't be able to tap into, but a teenager or an adult would definitely enjoy, or at least I think they will enjoy it. From the videos I've seen, it might be actually kind of fun, but we shall see in today's video just how fun those things are. So what I think I'm going to do is take the A50 out of the box, and I will come back to you when it is out of the box. So here is the PSS-A50 out of the package, and as you can see, if you remember what the F30 looked like, this looks pretty much the same without the brighter colors. So this has the same exact form factor of the PSS-A50, but it has some additional features that I wanted to talk about in today's video, and those additional features are pretty much the main selling points of the instrument. This actually has less sounds than the F30, but because of these additional features, Yamaha has raised the price. One of those features I wanted to touch on later on in this video will be the touch response of the action, because this keybed is actually capable of playing loud and soft. I also wanted to discuss the motion effects, which are essentially when you're playing the piece, if you push this button, it will alter the tone while you're pushing that button. I wanted to talk about the sustain and portamento features. I also wanted to go through most of the sounds. There's only 40 of them, so I can probably play a couple of notes on each one and give you guys a taste of the whole instrument. I wanted to briefly talk about the record functionality, because this one actually has a rudimentary recording functionality. I also wanted to discuss the arpeggio features, which is another large selling point of this instrument. And other than that, it's pretty standard. You've got a built-in metronome, you can increase the volume, you can octave shift, and that's about it. It's a pretty simple thing, but because of these additional features the Yamaha has added from the F30, those are the things that we will mostly be focusing on in today's video, as well as the overall user experience, like always. So, the PSS-A50. It is now time to play it and also discuss the instrument. Now, the first thing you'll probably notice is that it doesn't really look that great. It's hard to see the user interface. And I'm seeing the same thing too. It is kind of difficult to read. As someone who has good vision like myself, it is easier to read than someone who has visual impairments. So if any of you out there have any of those and have difficulty seeing subtle colors, this isn't really going to be that great of an option, because you've got gray tiny text on a black shiny background, and at certain angles the light, because this whole area is actually like a mirror, it's glossy, so not only does it attract fingerprints, but also it's hard to see. Sometimes you'll get glare on it that makes it impossible to read. So that, I think, is the first flaw with this instrument, and I think that we will find that that is actually a common theme with this keyboard. There are no fatal flaws with it. There's just a lot of little tiny things that all kind of compound together to make this into a keyboard that I think is definitely not Yamaha's finest, and is certainly not my favorite of all of Yamaha's keyboards by any stretch of the imagination. I had said in the beginning of the video that I thought maybe it'll be Yamaha's best $100 keyboard. And I am no longer thinking that way after playing it a bit off camera. But let's dive into why I feel that way. And the number one reason is in partly the price and also the fact that there is no pedal. Now, yes, it is only $100, but I feel like at a certain point you should begin to be raising your expectations, and I feel like $100 is certainly approaching that boundary, and I feel like at $100 you should have a musical instrument that has the option, at least, of running with a sustain pedal. Nothing fancy, it can be a foot switch, but this does not have any options to put a sustain pedal in the instrument. I had heard that it did, but it doesn't. I've looked all over for it, and it does not have that. So that is one issue with this. You cannot run a sustain pedal. The best you can do is this button up here that says sustain next to it, and then the little tiny screen says sun, or S on and S off with a capital F. So basically, that's what we have here, and that's the best we can do, is a button that continuously holds the damper pedal down. Let's hear how that sounds. So that is what we have, and that is the best you can do for sustain, and I'm going to switch that off because I really dislike that. That is the best you can do for sustain, and I feel like at the $100 price point, you should start being able to treat a keyboard instrument more like a real piano. Of course, not everyone is getting a digital piano to learn how to play the piano, but that is the common goal of the majority of people. Some people want to buy a digital keyboard because they want to mess with synth noises, but if it has a digital piano sound, there's a likelihood, and if it's from Yamaha, who makes acoustic pianos, there's a chance someone might get this with the intention of being able to learn how to play the piano. And yes, you can learn the note names and you can learn how to play scales, but it's only 3 octaves. And so you're going to start to run out of room some of the time for scales, and you can really only do the majority of scales in 2 octaves before you run out of room. So it's not going to be the greatest thing for that. And as far as the technique of playing the keyboard, because it has touch response, if you thought that perhaps you could learn how to play a piano and express yourself on a piano with this instrument, that is not true at all. Yes, it has touch response, but obviously for $100 you're not going to get a weighted action. This is just kind of like a synth-style action that happens to have some dynamic response. So for the touch response, I was worried it would only be 2 levels of dynamics, and if we take a listen, you can hear that that is not true. There are more than 2 levels of dynamics. But however, because it's not a weighted action, your touch response is kind of going to be all over the place. It's not going to be very consistent. I had heard some people saying that this was a great action, that they loved it, and I wouldn't say either of those. I wouldn't say it's a great action, and I wouldn't say that I love it. I'd say it's an okay action for $100, but I definitely wouldn't say I love it. You can change the touch response with this little tiny button labeled Shift. If you push Shift and you push this key, which is labeled nicely up here, touch response, you can change it. As you can see on the screen here, you've got 1, 2, 3 off, and then 1. So 1 is going to be a very, very loud sound. As you could hear, that was extremely loud. And then you can actually change it to not 13. What is that? To 3, which is actually the least sensitive of them all. So, but even with the least sensitive, when you try to play dynamics, and you will probably hear this throughout my video, you'll get random notes that are sometimes a little bit too loud or a little bit too quiet, and as a pianist, that really annoys me. So the touch response, although that's nice, it's not really that well executed on this instrument. So the user interface, I've already mentioned it's difficult to read, but there's more things about it that I dislike. For example, when you are selecting sounds, and this was the same way on the PSS-A50, but I kind of cut it some slack because it was only $59. This is almost double the price, and so you'd think that it would be a little more logical. To change the sounds, you have all of these categories: piano, organ, guitar, bass, strings, woodwinds, brass, synth lead, synth pad, and drums and percussion. To change the different sounds within the category, you just push the button over and over again, and you get different sounds. For example, here is the sound of a Fender Rhodes. And so within each category, you can just push the button over and over again to toggle between the sounds. And that might sound great, but in some of these categories, there's more than 4 sounds. There's 5 or 6. So if you're scrolling through and you find one you like, but you accidentally go one too far, you can't go back to the previous one. You have to toggle through all of them to come back around to the same sound. And then if you skip it again on accident, you have to make the same cycle again. So it's a little bit annoying. But not only that, as you can see with the piano category, the acoustic piano is labeled 1, the Fender Rhodes is labeled 2, and you've got 2 others labeled 3 and 4. That makes sense. If you go to the organ section, though, we do not have sound 1 of the organ. We instead have 5, and then 6, and 7, and 8, and then back around to 5. And in a sense, this makes sense because it differentiates this from piano. You can tell by looking at the screen, this is not my piano sound. But at the same time, when you're up here in the synth category where it's 36, 37, 38, 36, 37, 38, 32, it's hard to remember which one's the first one and which one's the last one, and it's just kind of, I don't know, I feel like that could have been executed better. This screen itself is incredibly small, and yes, it is a $100 keyboard, but at a certain point, you start expecting more. And I feel like the $100 price bracket is where you start to expect more than with a $59 keyboard. And I don't really think that this meets those expectations for me. However, the sounds that are in here, some of them are actually pretty nice. I like some of these organ sounds. Unfortunately, there is no Leslie button. There might be one of the motion effect buttons that is kind of like a Leslie simulation. But the motion effect is a whole nother category of weird, and I don't like the way the user interface works for here too. To change the motion effects, what you do is you hold shift and then you reach up here or use your other hand, which blocks the entire rest of the user interface. You come up here and then you can use the motion effect button. And when you hold shift and you push the motion effect button down, you can see that the screen is changing. There's three categories. There's A, B, and C. A is a filter, B is pitch modulation, and C is just other types of modulation. So as you scroll through here, you can see we're climbing the ranks of category A, now we're onto category B, and if we keep scrolling through here, you can see eventually we'll make it around to C. And then we should cycle back around to A. But as you can see, there's like 10 different effects in each category. So let's say I wanted to aim for A4, or let's do A5, but I hit the button on accident and I go to A6. I can't go back to A5. I have to do this to get all the way back around to A5. A3, 4, 5. There we go. I don't like that. That's so complicated. It's so overly complicated. Why can't there be a left and right button like there is for the octave shift or for the master volume? Why can't there be left and right for the motion effect? It's okay that there's not for the piano sounds because there's only like 3 to 5 in each category, but for the motion effect where there's like 30, yeah, that kind of gets old pretty quickly. So I find that annoying. What are motion effects, you're probably wondering? Well, the motion effects are essentially a sound that, an effect that will alter the sound that you're playing when you push that button. Right now we are on motion effect B4. It's a pitch one. Let's play a chord here and see how it changes the sound. So that's one of the motion effects. I was being a bit silly with it there. But that is an example of one of the motion effects. One of my favorites is actually, I think it's B5. If that's not it, I'm just going to mess around with it and find it. So I'm just going to play around with this for a little bit and let you guys hear some of the motion effects. So that's a little idea of the motion effects. When I heard them online, I thought they might be kind of fun to mess with. And they're fun to mess with, I guess, but they aren't as musically usable as I had thought. B5, the one where it sweeps up a whole step into the note that you play, or a half step, whatever it is, that one's the most usable. All the other ones are kind of wacky, and I couldn't really imagine anyone using them to great effect. So those are the motion effects. They're cool, but I don't really see the point, frankly, myself. And I don't think that the motion effects are something that you should pay $50 extra to have in an instrument. Now, the Portamento feature over here is another one I wanted to talk about that doesn't wow me. Usually Portamento does. Portamento is when, it's usually found in synth music, when you're playing one note and you play another one and it sweeps into the next one, the pitch bends up. I love that sound. I really, really do. But this does not execute that well. I mean, it's $100. I shouldn't be complaining about it. But while I'm on that topic of things that weren't done quite right, the Portamento isn't that strong to really make it sound cool, and I feel like it's different on some sounds and others too. Let's mess around with that same organ sound that I like and just play a couple of notes of Portamento. So it definitely is there, but it's kind of fast when you're playing a melody, and so it doesn't really add that much. So not a big deal, but just I thought I would have liked a slower Portamento sound myself, or even a customizable one, but I guess that's a bit too much to ask for $100. There's other organ sounds in here that I like as well. I'm going to play through a few more of them and let you hear some of the organ sounds. So as you can hear, there's only a few different organ sounds, and a couple of them are actually kind of cool. Up next is a guitar section that has a couple of cool different sounds. I'll play through these. So those are the guitars. Some of those are actually pretty nice. Up next is the bass category. I'll quickly run through these. So sounds 14 through 17 are different bass sounds, but as you heard, I accidentally hit the synth pad button, and if you accidentally do that, it doesn't remember what sound you were on in the previous category. So let's say I'm playing the guitar sounds and I'm playing number 13, and I accidentally go to change the sound and I hit the synth lead. Then I go back to the guitar and we're not on 13, we're back to 9. This, a little weird thing that kind of annoyed me. Okay, it is now time to move on to the strings category, but at the same time I wanted to talk about the arpeggio, because that's a big reason people buy this instrument, is because the arpeggio feature. They think it's going to be amazing. And when I saw videos of this, I was actually impressed with videos I saw online of what it could do for just $100. But after getting it in person, I'm realizing that the arpeggio system isn't all that great. So what I'm going to do is go to strings sound number 19, which is a very nice pizzicato strings, and I'm going to turn on the arpeggio system and play a couple of chords and let you listen to what it sounds like. Here we go. So that's what it sounds like, and it's pretty cool. Now, what you might think you might want to do with this is to have the arpeggio going while you do a solo over that, and you play a melody along with the chords. And that is a limitation that this instrument cannot really do. I know it's a $100 instrument, but if you have the arpeggio function, I don't see the point in having the arpeggio if you can't play along with it by yourself. Now, yes, you can use this in conjunction with external loopers and computer software to be able to easily create loops effortlessly with the arpeggio system, but with this instrument itself, you can't. And here's why. If you want to change chords in the arpeggio system, you have to do it this way. You have to play the chords with the arpeggio system on, and then you can change them, and it works just like this. And I just did that. So you might be wondering, okay, cool, how can I play it? How can I have the arpeggio going by itself and have a hand free? You really can't. I can't play chords and have them change while I do a solo. Because when I'm using the arpeggio and I'm able to change the chords, what happens is I can't play anything else. I can't switch sounds. So I have to use the arpeggio hold function, which works like this. Have a listen. I swear, sometimes playing on these lower end keyboards makes me feel like I can't even play anything, because that wasn't that good at all. But you get the idea. I was able to play a different sound along with the arpeggio. But you might have noticed that I wasn't changing the chord. I was keeping that same exact chord the entire time, and that's because with the arpeggio hold system on, if you wanted to do a solo with a different instrument while the arpeggio is doing a different sound, you can't change the chord. You can. You actually can. And here's how you do it. What happens is you hold the chord down, and if it's in the arpeggio hold mode, you push the arpeggio hold button, change the chord, and then let go, and it will stick in that new chord. So it takes two hands. So you can't be doing a melody with your right hand and change chords with your left hand in arpeggio mode. Let me just show you what I mean. And somehow I managed to mess it up and make it return to the pizzicato string sound. Which is a thing I was looking forward to doing with this instrument, is to have it be doing the arpeggio mode and being able to solo along with it. But that's not a thing I can do. I know it's a $100 keyboard, but at a certain point your expectations should be raised. And I feel like you should be able to have the arpeggio mode going and change chords and be able to change sounds. I'm going to do a little test right here on camera and see if doing this a different way will allow me to do what I want to do, but I don't think it will. Let me test this out. Yeah, I didn't think so. As soon as you change the sound while manually holding the chords down, it changes the sound. So you can't do what I wanted it to do with this instrument itself. And that was something I was really looking forward to with the PSS-A50, was a $100 keyboard that could teach you how to do solos over instrumental chords and chord progression. Teach you how to make chord progressions and how to solo over your own chord progressions with some fancy technology, the arpeggio system. And you're not able to do that, and that makes me sad. So as a whole, the PSS-A50, I think I've covered just about everything there is to cover about it. I've gone through most of the sounds. They're all kind of this quality. Some of them are kind of cheesy, some of them are actually pretty decent. But the main focal points of this to make it different from the F30 that I've already reviewed, the arpeggio, the motion effects, and the phrase recording, which I didn't actually touch on, but it's also really flawed. All of those things are not that great. They're not that well executed. The motion effects are annoying to change. You can't easily change between them. You can't easily select a specific motion effect. The arpeggios aren't really that musically awesome, and you can't do cool stuff with them. You can only do chords. You can't do chords and a melody in a different sound. That's just not possible. And change chords at the same time. And the user interface is a bit wonky. It's kind of difficult to see. And that is everything I have to say about the PSS-A50. So that has been a review of Yamaha's PSS-A50, and although I don't like it, I also don't hate it. If you have one of these, or if you were thinking about buying one of these, I'm not going to say to not buy it. It's not inherently flawed or a horrible instrument. I just don't really see the $50 price difference myself between this and the PSS-F30. If I were looking for an instrument for my child, or even for myself as a beginning pianist, and I played one of these, as a non-pianist I might think it was okay, but as myself, as an actual pianist, I don't see that this has that much extra value over the PSS-F30. I just don't think the motion effects and the arpeggio and the lack of a sustain pedal and all of that, the wonky user interface, I feel like all of that has created an instrument that is just kind of mediocre, which is unusual for Yamaha because usually they excel at everything they do. I usually give Yamaha's nothing but praise. But this is a case where I really can't do that. They've attempted to create a very affordable instrument, but I think they did that already with the F30, and I think for this form factor and for this size, I don't think there's any really better thing you can get than the F30. The dynamic response isn't that useful. The motion effects and the arpeggios aren't really that useful. The sounds aren't, they're okay, I guess. They're not phenomenal. And overall, I just think it's kind of mediocre, and I can't really recommend it. I can't really strongly not recommend it. I can't say, do not buy this at any cost. I'm not saying that. But I'm not really recommending it. So if you're looking for an instrument of this price point, you can consider the PSS-A50, but it wouldn't be first on my list. I hope you guys have enjoyed this review of the PSS-A50, though. It has been an interesting experience. I've had a lot of people request it to me, and hopefully you have found it informative, and hopefully you do agree with me. Whether you do or don't, though, I do hope that you did enjoy this channel and the videos that I make on here. I do lots of reviews of Yamaha products and products from other companies as well. Digital pianos, acoustic pianos, and all kinds of other cool stuff. So if any of that sounds cool, you might want to think about subscribing. And if you do subscribe, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.